have such a great story to start off with today. Someone that is making such a huge difference in our community and with so many families, because we know the COVID crisis and increasing inflation has more and more families in the need of a hand up. And Lighthouse is there, a beacon of hope, supporting families while also working to end poverty in our area. Oh, that will be so great to see that happen. With us this morning is Ryan Hertz, President and CEO for the Lighthouse. Ryan, thank you so much for being with us. Can you hear us?
I can. Hello.
Hi, how are you? And can I say I love your background, but before we get to that, because you guys have so many amazing things that are going on right now, for those that maybe aren't familiar with Lighthouse, tell us about your mission.
Sure. So Lighthouse, Michigan was formed in 2019 as the result of a merger between Lighthouse of Oakland County and South Oakland Shelter, two organizations that were founded by the faith community to respond to emergency basic needs. So South Oakland Shelter to respond to emergency shelter for people experiencing homelessness, and Lighthouse of Oakland County originally to respond to hunger. And both started in congregations and were staffed by volunteers, and over the years developed a continuum of services to try to help people avoid economic crisis, help people escape poverty, and attain longer-term stability. So when we came together, we formed a new mission, building equitable communities that alleviate poverty. And our work includes emergency services, of course, stability services at the household level, so helping individuals attain some measure of economic stability to avoid future crises, and then working on the environmental barriers to ending poverty at a systems level. So that's actually what's behind me right now is one of our affordable housing communities called Coolidge Place in Oak Park. And so one of our primary areas of focus in terms of our systems change work is increasing affordability of housing for people across the economic spectrum in our community.
Because Ryan, for me, I think housing is one of the biggest issues. I remember when I moved back to Michigan, this area from North Carolina, I couldn't believe how expensive rent was to live here compared to the South. And I know that housing has increased all throughout the country. And I did we did a housing retreat on the streets of Detroit, and some of the homeless were telling me about what it took to get into an apartment. And we're talking about apartments most people would not even step in, right? Like they were roach infested and not up to code. And so many of them were having to come up with the first month, last month. Who can do that? I mean, it was so expensive.
Yeah, there's a lot of complexity as to why we're in such a circumstance. But, we try at Lighthouse to sort of address all of these different dimensions, right? So we want to make sure that the housing that we contribute to the community increases affordability, but also is high quality. And is an investment in the future well-being of the families that we serve. And when we held our community meeting in Oak Park to show folks what we were building at Coolidge Place, we were anticipating, because frequently affordable housing is a stigmatized issue, we were anticipating people coming with pushback against what we hope to do. But it was mostly people saying, wow, these are beautiful. I have family members who might qualify. How do I find out about openings in your facility? And then since we've built them, it's been the same. It's been an unending sort of wave of demand, and we're trying to continue to develop affordable housing to meet that in our community. But sadly, one of the big dimensions here is just lack of rental housing. So our belief is pretty much any housing units added into our community is going to help contribute to a longer-term solution for people.
I love your 360 approach and collaboration approach to this issue, because I think that is really what it's going to take, is people such as yourself. You think outside the box, and it's about partnerships. And with that, you guys have a big event coming on, because you have a big mission. But having a mission such as that takes money.
It does. For organizations like ours, really for the vast majority of organizations in the nonprofit sector, we're meeting needs that there's no market incentive to meet, right? If there was, then those needs would be met by organizations that are for profits. And so as a result of that, essentially every initiative we take on, we lose money unless we fundraise around it. So whether it's providing emergency shelter, whether it's providing emergency food, whether it's providing supportive services to the people in some of our housing units who face long-term disabilities, all of those services require philanthropic support in order to be sustainable. And so one of the ways that we do that is through events, both to raise money and to connect to people in the community to help them understand our mission and bring them closer to our organization. And one of my favorite, probably my favorite nonprofit fundraising event, and I'm a little biased to be honest, because I came up with the idea, gosh, it's probably been about 8 years, is the rent party. So prior to being a social worker, my undergraduate degree was in folklore and ethnomusicology, and I had a focus in music research and early American blues, jazz, boogie woogie music, and things like this. So
okay, wait a minute. I have to stop you right there because that's fascinating to me. Do you play an instrument?
I do, but I don't play early blues and jazz music. I am a musician. Yeah, but it took me an embarrassingly long time of working in homeless services to make the connection between rent parties, which is where so much of the early American jazz artists, that like people like Louis Armstrong and actually Detroit beloved Sippy Wallace and many others got started playing the rent party circuit. So when Black families in a variety of cities in the United States started to move into areas as redlining was sort of receding, there were affordability gaps, of course, but people wanted quality housing for their families. And so in order to address that gap in rent, people would throw rent parties. They'd sell tickets, they'd hire a musician, the musician would make some money, the homeowner would help with their rent, and they'd throw these concerts. And some of the most incredible musicians of all time got their start playing rent parties. Fast forward 5 or 6 years, and something clicked in my head, and I said, wait a minute, why aren't we throwing some kind of a rent party, given that we do all this rental assistance work and housing work? And a longtime friend of the organization and myself, one of our congregations in our shelter base of shelter volunteers, Pastor Chris Yaw, immediately said, well, I know a guy who owns the Stanley Kresge Mansion in East Arden Park, Boston Edison neighborhood, and I bet he would host a rent party. So we met Patty Lynch, who is our host, and this is our 6th one, but we had 2 years off because of the pandemic, but this will be our first one back after 2 years of a break. For I guess it's our 6th almost annual a rent party.
You know, I love the backstory. I hadn't heard that before, but that makes it even more special. But the great thing about this is, we're sorry, kind of spoil alert for everyone out there. It's sold out, which is a great thing for Lighthouse. It's
a very popular event. We have somewhat, limited capacity because it's at, this year it's actually expanded just from being at Patty's house. Some years we've had VIP tours of the Fisher Mansion next door. This year we actually have 3 homes surrounding Patty's house, all kind of a part of the event. And it's essentially all outdoors other than the home tours. So we really wanted to try to make this safe and accessible to everyone in the community. And there'll be, I'm trying to think of how many stages we actually have set up, but we have Planet D No Net, a 9-piece big band featuring RJ Spangler performing. They perform every year with us. We have Thornetta Davis singing with the Planet D No Net for a set. We have Laura Rain and the Caesars, the Audio Birds, jazz bassist Noah Jackson. And it's going to be an incredible event, strolling to different stages, different performances, strolling food, drinks. It's just a big party to help address housing insecurity.
The great thing about this is you're not only helping Lighthouse, but also so many of the musicians that have been struggling because of COVID.
True. Just like the original rent parties, we also are happy to support the music community in providing this gig.
That's great. So how much money have you guys raised from this event?
So usually the event raises around $50,000 a year. This year, our team set a goal of $100,000, which I thought was a little bit steep, and we've already surpassed it. So amazingly, I guess people were really itching to get back to our rent parties, and we've surpassed our fundraising goal, but we do have a matching gift from Huntington Bank for folks who want to just contribute cash donations, whether they're at the event or want to do so from home. You can go to therentparty.org and make a donation there. And hopefully next year, we'll be able to see you at the event, but we are sold out this year.
I think that's a great thing, though. I know that when we were emailing, you're like, oh, I have to tell you it's sold out. I'm like, that is awesome. That is such great news, because it also reminds the rest of us, like, get your ticket early, right? Like,
of course, yeah. Yeah. You know, it's an event that's really popular both for the businesses that sponsor us, because it's different and it's a lot of fun, and it's a fun thing to bring, you know, employees and clients to. We also sell quite a number of individual tickets to the event. You know, this year it's on Saturday, this coming Saturday night, from 6 to 11 in Arden Park in Detroit. Next year we're probably going to shake things up and try a different venue, just for the sake of variety. And we may actually move the day of the week as well and try to shake things up a little bit. So stay tuned for more on next year's event.
I think you kind of maybe should do this twice a year. I'll just throw that out.
We do have other fundraisers, so I'm happy to come back on and promote our fall signature gala when that's approaching.
So with that, can I ask, because someone will sit there and say, oh my God, $100,000 is a lot. But really, when you take that in the perspective of all the work that your organization does, it's kind of a drop in the bucket. So I would imagine you need people, whether they can donate, you know, in the form of money or even volunteers. What can people do to help what you're doing?
Yeah, so to give people some perspective on, to your point about the scale, so this event will raise about $100,000. Our fall event usually raises between $200,000 to $250,000, and that's just a fraction of the giving that comes into our organization in a given year, whether from individuals, businesses, foundations. You know, there's a variety of sources, congregations, but our budget this fiscal year that's ending at the end of this month, we're going to end up spending more than $20 million on our mission this year. And that's on operations. That doesn't include things like real estate development that is on a completely different set of books, right? So right now we're in the middle of a $40 million redevelopment of 234 units of public housing in Pontiac, and in partnership with our friends at the Pontiac Housing Commission. And all of this important work obviously is funded in a variety of ways. But as I said earlier, there's always this gap, and that gap is made up of a variety of cash contributions, in-kind contributions, and a lot of volunteers. We have tens of thousands of volunteers that touch our organization in a variety of ways, close to 10,000 just in the congregations that traditionally have hosted our emergency shelter program. Prior to the pandemic, we had a rotating emergency shelter model through the South Oakland shelter. And many volunteers come through our food warehouse to sort and also do home delivery of emergency food to families in our community that, for whatever reason, aren't able to get to pantries directly. And so we do our best to fill gaps. And as you said, we're, you know, one of our key values of our organization is collaboration. For us, you know, we seek to enhance the community's overall collective response to poverty the best way that we can. What talents can we bring? What talents can our community bring? What resources can we bring? And how can we do this all together?
Are you seeing an increased need right now, not just because of COVID, but the inflation prices?
Yeah,
they're insane, especially around food.
Yeah, unfortunately, you know, we were hoping to see some relief from the work that we've been doing in sort of an expanded emergency services focus since early 2020. When we merged South Oakland Shelter and Lighthouse, our hope was really to focus on expanding our systems change work, our affordable housing work, our community development work, because we felt that, you know, emergency services are important, but they're kind of the doorway in to helping families become more stable in the long term. And our bottleneck for being able to do that is affordable housing units and other barriers in the community that, folks, low to mid income, hardworking families face every day. We have tens of thousands of families in Oakland County who spend more than a third of their gross income on rent, and it's not sustainable. So that was our goal to focus on. And then the pandemic happened, and we found ourselves kind of going back to our roots and really focusing on emergency services again, because there was this massive influx of need. And a lot of organizations, at the same time as there was a massive influx of need, a lot of organizations set up to respond to that need. A lot of grassroots groups had to close up shop. They didn't have models to safely deliver those services. They didn't necessarily have the volunteer power once people were, a lot of volunteers are in our community are older people who are higher risk. And so early on, we stepped into that role of filling those gaps. And we hoped by now that there would be some relief there. But as you've said, unfortunately, we're sort of going on all cylinders. So we're trying to push and grow our systems change work and concurrently trying to establish longer term, more sustainable mechanisms to respond to emergency needs as they ebb and flow in our community.
Well, we are so blessed to have you in our community, and to everyone out there, please, if you are lucky enough to not need your services, donate. If you can't donate, money or food, donate your time. Ryan, thank you so much for being with us. We so appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.